All right. Welcome everybody to our latest AMA. I know a lot of you guys have been tracking along super closely since we announced that we're going mainnet in less than a month. So yeah, this sort of update is around a big kind of milestone we just hit this week, and excited to share with you all. I'm kind of stalling a little bit so that folks can make it in, but um, yeah, I think in case anyone missed it, again, the LAMINA1 Mainnet is launching next month in May 2024, and we've got a number of AMAs up on our roster this month for the community, designed to kind of give you all a look inside the things we're working on as we bring this chain live to the public, and also get you all armed with the information that you guys will need to start onboarding and supporting the network from day one. So on that note, this week's AMA is focused on early Fuji testing and the infrastructure that we're going to be deploying on Avalanche for mainnet launch. As we mentioned last week, the LAMINA1 Testnet subnet is officially up and running on Fuji, which is Avalanche's testnet. And we'll be onboarding our top tester communities soon onto this chain to do some pre-mainnet testing in the lead up to launch. Now, for folks who want the proof, I'm posting a link in the Explorer right now where you can check out the new subnet just on the Avalanche Explorer now. You can kind of see some of the internal tests that we've been doing. As you guys can see, blocks are forming. We've got a little over 100 blocks and 116 transactions that we've been working through with our internal team, just making sure that things are working properly. And yeah, today I am joined by our Chief Technology Officer, Will Carter, and he's here to just basically give us an overview of, what's been going on with the L1 engineering team behind the scenes as this new mainnet infrastructure is starting to go live, and also to answer a bunch of questions from you all about, the network, about the upcoming testing we're going to be doing together, and kind of what to expect as we dive in the lead up to launch. So ready, Will? How are you doing? How's it going?
I think it's going pretty well. We are in the proverbial digital weeds at the moment, getting everything ready for you guys for mainnet. But yeah, everything is going fairly smoothly, if not, a bit of a time crunch. But yeah, we're excited. Everything, like I said, is going smoothly. We should have some new stuff to show you guys here pretty soon. As Casey mentioned, Fuji's been up for a little bit now. Bernie, who's one of our lead engineers, got our first cross-chain transactions moving between our chain and the Fuji C chain just yesterday. So we are officially talking between our chain and the Fuji EVM environment, both with AVAX coins and the L1 coin. The foundation has been proposing and creating some governance and tokenomic structures and contracts, and we're getting those set up in Fuji so we can start testing those. And then, working on updated airdrop infrastructure as well. And then, of course, sort of getting the hub ready to support this and some other new functionality, which we're excited to share with you guys. So yeah, a lot going on, but so far it's all going really well.
It's always good to hear that. I feel like every day I ask Will, I'm like, how's it going? We still on track? How's it going? We still on track? And he's like, yeah, it's been smooth, which is what a blessing. So I definitely want to dive into some community questions. I've been pulling them out of the server, all of the discussions that we've been having. The server has been on fire since we made the announcement last week, which is what we like to see. But I guess just to really start from the basics, well, for anyone who's super new to this, like what exactly is the Fuji testnet, and like how are we going to be using it, I guess, both during this initial test process and also like during mainnet or after mainnet?
Yeah, so Fuji is it's basically a public test environment, very similar to what DataNet was actually, and what it sort of was envisioned to remain post mainnet. But it's a place like usually when you develop projects in a Web3 environment, you do the bulk of your development locally, which is great. It's obviously real easy to develop against that type of environment because you have complete control over it. You can reset it as much as you'd like. but at some point you want to sort of deploy to a more realistic environment that includes, the entire deployment process itself, but also includes interacting with a live community of people. And so that's kind of what Fuji enables us to do, which is prior to deploying everything on Avalanche, we can go through that deployment process, make sure we catch all of the potential hiccups along the way, and then actually test this amongst a live community of people. Specifically with those cross-chain transactions, we can begin sending currency back and forth between live chains. So yeah, it sort of gives us that live public environment to do testing in. And post mainnet, we envision it remaining so that whoever wants to deploy a project on LAMINA1 could go ahead and do, again, their local development and then move over to the Fuji network where, we're expecting to maintain parity from a functionality standpoint with the mainnet.
Awesome. And is the infrastructure that we're launching on Fuji, so like that's the same that's going to launch on mainnet, right? Like, are there any big differences?
Let me think about that for a second. I would say no, nothing that's structurally meaningful to the end user. Everything is going to look very similar to how it'll look in mainnet. Yeah.
Awesome. And how is the infrastructure for this Fuji subnet and ultimately for mainnet, like how is it different from what we launched for beta? Like, I would love, I think, just kind of for you to give us a little bit of an overview on like what are some like changes or tweaks that folks can expect kind of behind the scenes, maybe on the back end with this once we start getting our hands on the Fuji testnet and start testing.
Yeah, so I think the biggest difference from an infrastructure and architecture standpoint is that we're no longer operating the C chain. So I think like throughout beta, everyone was interacting with the chain through the hub on the LAMINA1 C chain, which is going to now be the equivalent to the Fuji C chain. So instead of doing the bulk of your interactions within the LAMINA1 network on that kind of central shared chain, it's all going to be done within a chain on our own subnet. So that would be like one specific change that's fairly meaningful. You'll still be able to talk with the Fuji main chain. That's what Teleporter, AWM, and what I mentioned earlier, being able to move tokens back and forth between these two chains, that kind of facilitates that. But yeah, the biggest change is that we are now sort of a part of the Avalanche ecosystem, both within Fuji and on the Avalanche mainnet. And so outside of operating primarily within the LAMINA1 subnet rather than on a shared chain, you'll also have access to the wider Avalanche ecosystem through that warp messaging back to the C chain, and that'll include all of the projects that are launched on the C chain, dexes, marketplaces, other projects that are launched out there. So I think that's probably from an end user standpoint one of the biggest changes. And also one of the biggest benefits and reasons why we decided to partner with Avalanche on this. Instead of trying to like grow the ecosystem that Avalanche has built around their platform from scratch with LAMINA1, we started sort of as a subnet, which allows us to plug directly into a mature ecosystem, again, with those marketplaces and other projects and dexes already in place.
Awesome. Ed just asked a really good question that I think is a good follow-up to this question, who asks, what's the roster of subnets that we've got? So are we going to have like a main subnet, an identity service subnet? Like what exactly are we launching?
Very good question, Ed. So on day one, we're going to be launching two subnets. There's going to be the LAMINA1 primary subnet. We're still trying to think of a good name for that. But that's essentially going to be the subnet that is used whenever you deploy something from the Creator Studio within the hub. Its native token is going to be the L1 token. And then we're going to have the identity subnet as a separate subnet. but it'll use, at least on day one, the same validator set. So that one is going to operate very similar to the way it already operates. There's some additional functionality we've been playing with that was enabled through warp messaging, which we can talk about in the future. But yeah, those are the two subnets you can expect on day one.
Awesome. And just as like a shout out to some stuff that Will and I are working on, we're going to be releasing an infrastructure white paper that kind of like lays out. We've got a new L1 architecture diagram, a bunch of that stuff that we're going to be releasing alongside Mainnet that you guys can really deep dive into. It's very much in the works, but we're excited to push it out, and that'll have more in-depth information on how all of the different parts are hooked up to each other and all of that stuff. But I will say, Will, I think the biggest question that we've had this week, after kind of announcing that early Fuji testing was going to start, is like, when can L1 community members expect to join in with testing? We were thinking it might be this week. We obviously wanted to do some internal testing first. So what's your timeline looking like after kind of getting this first round of transactions and tests and bridges done?
Yeah, so I think the network itself is ready. What we're waiting for now is actually some of the new functionality we're going to be launching at Mainnet, trying to get that integrated into the hub. Because, I mean, in terms of what we want you, the community, to help us test, it's going to be some of that stuff that really wasn't available in BetaNet. So it's going to be the cross-chain transfers between Fuji C chain and our subnet. That's something we want you to test out. And so we're working on integrating some of that cross-chain transfer functionality into the hub. There's, I guess I won't give away that one just yet. There's another thing we're going to have you test that I think everyone will be happy to play around with. And then there's the governance stuff is a big piece of the puzzle that we want everyone to get, or as many people as possible to get their hands on and play with prior to going live. The sort of timeline for that is developing. We are fleshing all that stuff out as we speak. We're really kind of coming down to the wire in terms of integration with the front end, but it's all going well. It's just taking, a little bit longer than expected. So we're hoping we could get some of that first, initial functionality that we actually want people to play around and test, like either late next week, at the end of next week, or the beginning of the week after. And then kind of moving from there, would probably have another feature push the following week and a half after that.
Great. And so, like, what is this early Fuji testing exactly going to look like for L1 testers? Like, is it just going to be like, a new version of the LAMINA1 hub that people sign into? Like, just that's been a big question on the server too.
Yeah, it's like I said, I think the priority types of tests that we want people to play around with are going to be around the new functionality that's revealed. But we also want people to go through all of the kind of same workflows that were available in BetaNet, make sure that as we've moved to this new infrastructure that, everything's working as intended. There was one other thing I was going to bring up. Sorry, it's been a long week. I lost it. But yeah, I mean, it's basically going to, the priority is around the new functionality. We really want to get people's hands on that, obviously, before it goes live in mainnet, and that hasn't been something we've been able to do in BetaNet yet. So awesome. Testing is going to last, right up to and after mainnet launches. So, Fuji will stick around, and we'll probably use it to deploy new functionality before it gets to mainnet. So if you aren't involved in the early Fuji testing, then there's a good chance at some point maybe you'll get in later on down the line.
That's super great to hear. That was another big question that we got from community members where, we're going to start with our top testers, which is basically 100 folks who were kind of at the top of our engagement and questing list for BetaNet. I'm actually planning to expand that cohort a little bit. I mean, the whole point of that group is that it's small and focused, right? We like to kind of pre-release things to these top testers. I'm going to be expanding that for BetaNet just to maybe another 100 or so users, just to accommodate folks who have kind of gone up the ranks in the community since the last time we did a big kind of community data poll. But I also think, yeah, like generally at LAMINA1, and top testers will know this. I think folks not in our top testers community aren't as aware that this is happening behind the scenes. But basically, like anytime we launch anything to the community, we tend to usually like we release it internally first, then we release it to our early access program members and top testers. They help us catch a bunch of the initial kind of bugs or weird things that happen and help us bring it out. And then we'll release it to, our big wide community of 50K users. So we've definitely got like kind of a process that's been working super well for us. And this will kind of go through there. But yeah, definitely stay tuned. I'll keep everybody posted on, when those expansions are going to be happening, when we're ready to onboard like a new batch of users. And I guess like in terms of the goals, so the goals of these early tests will, and correct me if I'm wrong, is just like go onto the hub, test some transactions, click around, make sure everything works the way that you would expect it to, or the way that it did in BetaNet, and like let us know if something isn't working or if you're getting weird error messages, right?
Yeah, and everything else remains the same as well. Like, the goal is to make this as usable as possible. So even outside of bugs, if you have suggestions on how things could work better or feel better around your particular use cases, that's all feedback we're trying to get as well. Because again, like mainnet is not the end, it's just the beginning. And all of this will continue to grow and evolve post mainnet launch. So yeah, make sure it
Awesome.
works and make sure it feels good. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I answered my question. The next question I had in the list was like, does this mean that like early testers are going to get a preview of some new functionalities going live on the LAMINA1 hub? And, the answer to that question obviously is like, yeah, this will be your kind of preview. I actually think Jacko Girl just hopped in the chat and kind of related to that message. Like, what exactly? So you mentioned that we'll have transfers. We want to play around with governance and stuff. Is staking going to be available in this new Fuji version of the hub? Like, what's our plan for that? Like, what exactly are people going to, are those sort of new functionalities that people are going to be able to play with?
Yeah, the foundation did, as I mentioned earlier, the foundation developed a tokenomics and staking proposal and structure, and they've put it down into smart contracts. We're playing around with those smart contracts now, getting them audited, reviewed. The goal there is to get them live and integrated into the hub internally so that we can start playing around with it internally. Then give it out to the community through the early Fuji testers and get their feedback on it as well. And then, hopefully any suggestions or changes that need to be made prior to or after that public testing, we'll be able to squeeze in before the mainnet launch. But yeah, the goal is to have staking in the LAMINA1 hub. And I see, Jackal, that you definitely don't want it to be the old staking interface. And I can confirm it will not be the old staking interface.
I am so excited about it, guys. I wish I could like show you guys what it looks like because it is so much better than the L1 staking wallet. It's going to be a revelation for you all. My God. I'm so happy with it. Because as we all know, anyone who uses the staking wallet right now is, that's just kind of something that we've been using. It's an old wallet that we used kind of from Avalanche, and there's a bunch of bugs in it, and we're so excited to bring it on platform and like with our sort of user-friendly sensibilities. Next big question, this is a big one that we've been asked on the server this week, is like, are Fuji testers going to need like AVAX tokens to test out the new network? If not, like, how are folks going to get the L1 testnet, the test tokens that they'll need to like make stuff or facilitate transfers? Like, what's our plan for that?
Yeah, we've been sort of thinking about a couple of approaches to this. I'm not ready to give specifics just yet, but we can either do like the standard faucet approach that we've done in the past. We have another idea in mind that would sort of help us kill two birds with one stone, and also get you guys some tokens to play with. But yeah, going back to the question of whether you need AVAX tokens, if you're going to test any of the cross-chain capabilities, then yes, you're going to need some AVAX tokens, at least on the Fuji network, which are free. There's a faucet forum. Um, Sometimes it can be a little hard to get tokens out of that faucet. We're going to play around with that as well, make sure that that's working smoothly. But yeah, as long as you're working within the LAMINA1 ecosystem and not doing any cross-chain transfers, you won't need the AVAX tokens. But if you do want to try moving stuff back and forth between the two chains, then you will have to get some of those tokens. So we'll have like a full set of instructions for you guys when the time comes.
Yeah. And what about the explorers? So like, how can testers check out their transactions on the new network? Are we going to be using the same sort of like block scout explorer we've been using for BetaNet, or are we transitioning over to Avalanche's explorer tools for mainnet?
I hope we never have to use that Explorer again. We will be using the Subnet Explorer, so the Avalanche Subnet Explorer. Our subnet is actually already live on it. If you go into test mode, so you can see. I think Casey had mentioned this early on that you could see the subnet and transactions up there currently. Our plan currently is to use that as the primary explorer for the network. We will, of course, keep some activity information directly within the hub and probably expand on that as time goes on. Because I think like the goal still remains to sort of keep Explorer functionality and the need to use the Explorer like really relegated to highly technical individuals, and instead make sure that you can see like the really important information at a glance directly within the hub. So and there's some other explorers in the Avalanche ecosystem that we're looking at getting integrated into as well. There's Avascan, who actually makes a pretty nice explorer. But yeah, currently the goal is to use the Subnet Explorer, or the plan is to use the Subnet Explorer and surface up the critical information in the hub.
Great. Also got a question this week. So is the team building a bridge between LAMINA1 and Avalanche? Obviously, the answer to that question is yes. Do you have any more details about that bridge? I know we've been having lots of conversations about this for the last 2 weeks. Do you have any more details about that bridge we're building?
Bridges are like in the Web3 ecosystem are both incredibly important and exciting because it connects all these ecosystems which were sort of closed gardens, but they're also sort of controversial because traditional bridges have always involved either trusted parties or sort of sketchy protocols, a lot of which have been broken over time. This one, the one we're using, and it's sort of one of the core reasons we chose to use Avalanche, is really nice because it's a native bridge. It doesn't really rely on a lot of external assumptions outside of the ones that are already exist within the Avalanche ecosystem. So, the bridge works the bridge works because the subnet uses, all the validators for the subnet are also validators for the Avalanche primary chains, which means that they can validate transactions between the two chains without having to trust like external parties, if that makes sense. So that means that this bridge is going to be fast, it's going to be efficient, and it's going to be really safe and secure.
Awesome. Yeah, there's definitely some chatter in the chat of how bridges are scary and vulnerable. And yeah, I didn't even know bridges were scary. That's you all teach me things every day. um,
They're
I
getting
think
better. They're definitely getting better, but these are going to be some of the least scary out there.
Nice. I also wanted to sort of like back up a little bit. I think with new mainnet announcement and a lot of folks kind of coming back to the server after longer hiatuses, it was news to a number of people that like, oh wait, LAMINA1's partnering with Avalanche, like, oh, like that's really crazy and super interesting. So I know we've answered these questions before on previous AMAs, but I definitely think it's worth kind of diving in again for anyone who's new here listening. But like, why did LAMINA1 choose Avalanche to launch on and partner with in the first place? Like, why did we do this?
Again, great question. I've covered some of the reasons already, but I'll talk a little bit about how we started and then sort of reiterate on some of those reasons. We started as a fork of Avalanche because, you know, very early on we were proponents of a multi-chain environment. Like it doesn't make sense from our point of view for everything to be sort of locked into a single chain. The chains just aren't performant enough to facilitate like even large single projects, let alone collections of projects from a bunch of different developers. And so we knew on day one that we would need to have some type of native bridging or interoperability system integrated into the platform. So we had chosen to fork Avalanche initially. And that's what BetaNet is. It's a complete fork of Avalanche, completely up to date and synced with the most recent code base. And we did that for a number of reasons. There is a lot of benefit to being able to manage the requirements of running a validator in what the native token that lives on the C chain is. But a lot of the sort of improvements that we were going to make to Avalanche as we started talking to their team, we realized that they were already well underway in sort of developing a lot of them. And so, we've always had a fairly good relationship with Avalanche. We like the direction that they're going, both from an engineering standpoint and sort of from an ecosystem standpoint. And so it just made sense to work with them and sort of migrate to being an official part of their ecosystem rather than trying to fork it. And I had mentioned this earlier in the AMA, but like one of those reasons is the ecosystem, again, that they've built around Avalanche is sort of rich and growing quickly. And this partnership allows us to tap directly into that on day one rather than, spending a year trying to build it up from the ground up. And then also, there's I forgot what the other kind of property that I mentioned earlier in the call was. But yeah, I mean that's the biggest one is it's just a lot easier on day one of a network when you can access a lot of mature infrastructure. It's easier for getting big partners involved when everything's been, tested and live already for years on end. It's easier for content creators when they have access to a richer ecosystem with more users, more marketplaces. So yeah, it right now it just makes sense to partner with Avalanche, and we're really happy with how that partnership has turned out.
Awesome. I'm going to start diving into some chat questions. We've kind of answered some of the other ones just through the course of the conversation. Ed asks, you mentioned cross-chain tokens. Just we're about to get real technical here, but are these ERC20 wrapped versions, or does Avalanche have some like ways to do native tokens in different subnets?
They're technically wrapped. Question. Yeah, they're technically wrapped tokens. So
okay.
We'll have an ERC20 wrapped version of our token on the C chain. There'll be an AVAX wrapped ERC20 on our chain. And the minting rules around them are tied directly into the bridge contracts itself. So like there's no way that we can manipulate those values or anything. So yeah, that's
cool. And also ask Subnet RPC info when?
Soon. We'll get it to you guys soon. You won't be able to do too much with it until we get you some tokens.
Awesome. If anyone else has any additional questions that they want to ask about early Fuji testing that we haven't gone over, feel free to drop them in the chat. This one, I'm trying to keep this one pretty quick again, because Will is like the busiest man in the entire world currently, trying to get everything up and running for you guys. But yeah, I hope that that was super helpful in kind of reviewing, Fuji testing will start, potentially end of next week with you all. In the meantime, feel free to check out the subnet links that we posted above in the chat. I also wanted to post our secret code for this session, obviously, here as we wait. And again, if you have any additional questions, pop them in the chat now, because we still have a little bit of time left. But yeah, the secret code, I posted a quest today that basically you can redeem for watching or catching this one. So definitely input it. And yeah, as always, I'll keep you all posted on the next steps for testing, questing, and participating in the lead up to launch. So I think coming up next, just as an FYI, we're going to be bringing the Open Metaverse Foundation on to speak to everyone about LAMINA1 governance, tokenomics, and another very popular question that's hit, which is, where can I get L1 when the network goes live? So we're still trying to lock down an exact time or date from the foundation for that, but it's looking like it's either going to be end of next week or early the week of the 22nd, when we're going to get them on to kind of walk you all through that stuff. So, in the meantime, if you have questions around tokenomics, governance, staking, any of that stuff, drop them in AMA questions. I'll be working on compiling that for the foundation to go over with you all in just a couple of days. We're also going to be sharing a big update for our current BetaNet validators over the next couple of weeks, basically overviewing the node infrastructure and rollout plan that we have planned for supporting the network. And again, I'll give you guys kind of a preview of what on-platform staking is going to look like through this early Fuji testing, which again is something we've been really working hard on and are really looking forward to getting your guys' feedback on. And of course, just as my final plug, stay tuned for the next era of our Journey to Mainnet drop on Twitter and Discord early next week. It looks like a ton of people are having a lot of fun with this week's model. The last I checked, I think we had like 700 people participating across Discord and Twitter, generating images, which has been awesome. So many of the images we've been generating have been absolutely incredible. I'm really proud of your guys' prompting skills and the custom model that we've created. It's going to be fun. Next week, just as a special AMA thing, we're going to be entering the world of 80s arcade games and early consoles. So let's definitely go. Finally, reminder to all here that finally the LAMINA1 Quest platform is officially going dark in just 2 weeks' time on Friday, April 26th at midnight UTC. So, make sure you finished up as many quests on Zealy as you can between now and then. All of that data will be then sent in a final BetaNet data pull that we're going to be sending off to the foundation for upcoming incentives and rewards during the mainnet period. So, complete those quests, tell your friends, make sure that you don't have any quests that are kind of floating on your quest board when you log in. And yeah, we're getting super close, guys. It's amazing to see you all so excited on the server. It's been a wild ride. It's just the beginning, and super exciting times. Thank you all so much. Well, stay tuned. Hope that was a good overview. Talk to you guys later.
Yeah, thanks everyone.